Good morning and welcome to Monday Morning Quarterback for Sunday, November 9th. I'm Pastor Steve of the Jenkins Memorial Church, and we're continuing the story of Ruth today. Where we picked up was Ruth chapter 2. And in this story, Ruth and Naomi, having come back from Moab, now they're living in Naomi's old house, but they still don't have food. They don't have a job. What do? So Ruth decides to go out and glean in the fields. We were told at the end of chapter 1 the barley harvest had started. So she goes along in this field, and the workers are going through. They're cutting with the scythe. They're bundling up these bundles of barley. But then there's gleaners are going along behind. She becomes one of those, and she's picking up all the stray pieces, the pieces of barley they have. Not a lot, but she's picking that up. Boaz is introduced to us. He comes and we suddenly meet Boaz. He's wealthy, he's generous, he's a kind man. He sees Ruth working there. He knows the story of how she is taking care of Naomi. And so he blesses her by putting his protection, his covering over her, and saying, may the Lord bless you, under whose wings you've now taken shelter. Take shelter under mine as well. And he provides food for her in safety and security and allows her to glean even up among the sheaves and tells him drop some so she has extra. He's very generous to her. Now we have a tendency to read this in the Western world as Naomi is sending Ruth out. Ruth is a hard worker. And Ruth has earned this generosity from Boaz because she has worked hard. Those that want to eat have to work hard. She's worked hard. She gets the scraps here, and that is righteousness on Boaz's part, but it also shows the hard work of Naomi. And we often then apply that over into our own understanding of how we are supposed to care for the poor because they need to earn it. They should get what they deserve, not anything that's a blessing, because they should work. Well, the problem is the gleaning laws of the Old Testament found in Leviticus 19:9 and Deuteronomy 24:19 indicate to us that those gleanings in the field are not Boaz's. Just as the field is not Boaz's, the whole field belongs to God and those gleanings belong to God. And it's not out of the generosity of Boaz's hearts, but it's out of the generosity and the mercy of God that those gleanings are given to them. In fact, it's that Ruth owns those gleanings. God gave them to her because God cares about the poor, the widow, and the orphan. And so Boaz is just being obedient because Ruth is to be cared for in that way, but she can't care for her own. Jesus picks us up in Matthew 25 when he talks about caring for the least of these. When do we see you hungry or thirsty or alone or in prison or sick or a stranger? And he says, whenever you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. And this is the idea of the judgment scene here in Matthew 25. Too often Christians have come out on the side of saying, no, you have to earn anything that you get. If you're poor, I'm sorry, that's your fault. But no, God wants to care for the poor. And he calls for us to care for the poor in the same way with our gleaning.